Of the first questions that I ask, especially people that are doing whatever you're doing, is why?
Our mission is to empower rural communities to take informed action towards protecting human, animal, and environment health through safe water, through provision of safe water and resilience to climate change. Yeah. We find that open water sources like wells, ponds, and springs are the only water sources available for people in rural communities or in vulnerable communities. You could find a rural community, but when it's not very vulnerable. But there are those vulnerable communities when these are the only sources of water that they have, and they are waiting for a ray of hope to come sometime to give them safe, clean water.
This week on UBC.
So usually people, what happens is that people start businesses and the next week they're already getting money out of that business. Oh, it can even take you 4 years to break even, to ever break even. Because now I have learned, I know that tricks, I know that I'm still learning more about the business, but at least I have that experience of restaurants, how they run, how you should.
Depending on the challenges you experience from the start.
Taxes, yes. But it's always challenging, and that is what kills most of our young entrepreneurs.
God does not sit to waste his time. If you have no defense, it chases you.
It is a rule on the foundations. Business has been conducted in a certain way.
Banks take money from us, depositors. All of us seated here have got money in the bank. And even before you walk out, they've given that money to somebody else.
Deeply incisive.
The law enjoins us to be answerable to the sovereign of the country.
Members of the force, we have always been demanding officers to be highly disciplined and being accountable to people of Uganda.
Authentically symbolic and insightful.
We should work so hard to evacuate this power.
Behind the Headlines, every Wednesday at 10 p.m. with Charlse Odongotho.
A very welcome.
Probably the most experienced talk show moderator in Uganda, with a team of illustrious panelists. Honorable Margaret Mohanga, a veteran journalist, legislator, entrepreneur, and development consultant. And Ramadan Gobi, an economist and university don.
I've really got perturbed that in Uganda we are building parties with no membership subscription.
All on your public broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
A very warm welcome this evening to this edition of Behind the Headlines here on UBC. My name is Charlse Odongotho, your host, and this Wednesday, the 14th of April 2021, I have a packed house, an illustrious panel here to discuss a major industry, a topic that is close to every human being alive. It's only a dead person who wouldn't mind about this. But we are going to be looking at the National Health Insurance Scheme in Uganda. A bill was passed into law, enacted by Parliament last week or the week before. The chairperson of the committee is here to discuss with us that, so he will be telling us exactly when and at what time it was passed, because that is his baby. But to discuss the entire topic of understanding the National Health Insurance Scheme in Uganda, we have starting with the only lady on the show, Madame Dora Kichoncho Musinguzi. Musinguzi is the Executive Director of UGANET, which stands for Uganda Network on Law, Ethics and HIV/AIDS. Kichoncho, you are most welcome to the show, especially being your maiden appearance. Good to have you. Then let me go to my extreme left, the Honorable Dr. Michael Bukenya. Dr. Michael Bukenya is MP for Bukuya County in Kasanda District, the other side of Mubende, but he is the chairperson of the Health Committee in the 10th Parliament, the current Parliament. You're most welcome, Doctor, to the show.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening, viewers. And I thought you would say the other side of Kasanda. Because we are no longer in Mubende.
No, the other side of Uganda.
And also, this is my maiden appearance.
Oh, it's maiden appearance for all of you, almost. But it's good to have you all for this maiden appearance, yeah. Next to Dr. Michael is not doctor yet. Okay. Mr. Benson Kwikiriza is a senior legal officer in charge of regulations and drafting at the Uganda Insurance Regulatory Authority. This is the insurance regulator. And Council, I must welcome you to the show as well.
Thank you, Charles. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Passing now Kichoncho, let me introduce he is, like myself, he's also a survivor of COVID, but I'm glad to have him here on the show. A man who, without a mask, he would need no introduction. Dr. Runumi Francis, he comes all the way from the land of the Bachiga, and but Runumi is a former, was it director in charge of? Commissioner in charge of planning in the Ministry of Health, and Dr. Runumi is in other quarters. He is known as the architect of the insurance bill or law, if you like, and he really birthed it, and we shall be listening from him as well. Finally, next to me here is seated Nicholas Lotakome. Lotakome is from the Uganda Insurance Association and is the managing director of Sanlam Life. You're most welcome, sir, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good. We will be having online from Mutungo. We will be having Ramadan Gobi, the economist teacher, and when my producer alerts me that he is online, ready to shoot, I will invite him to the show and welcome him to the show. But let me start with, let me start from the background. Dr. Runumi, you know why you and your team thought several years ago, over a decade, I think, ago, that there must be a health insurance scheme in Uganda. And coming from a medical background, it's even sweeter that you should be the one to tell us. When you saw this bill being passed into law last week or the week before last, did you get satisfied? Did you get encouraged that yes, finally, this thing has come to pass? And was it passed the way you envisaged it? Do you think that it is going to help a lot, a great deal, the health sector, the sick, whoever needs it most, in your view?
Thank you, Charles, and good evening, viewers. I would like to ask for permission to remove the mask for the sake of addressing this topic. And I return my mask as my colleagues start giving a submission.
The survivor wouldn't request for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles. I think one of the best days I have had is the day when in Parliament this bill was tabled and unanimously all people who made submissions were in strong support. This is because it was delivering like a baby whose gestation spans over 2 decades. Because while I was still at the Ministry of Health, we did a lot of work, we put in a lot of effort to ensure that at least we get a social health insurance in this country, which was later transformed to become the National Health Insurance. Why were we doing that? It's because we had realized there are so many problems in the community that require medical intervention. But because there were not enough resources and were being advised by multiple quarters, including our neighbors, there was need to come up with alternative financing mechanisms. Why? The policy of government was, of course, to provide free health care in all government outlets. But that free government health care was not adequate for the growing population. And we were always experiencing a funding gap between the demand of services by the growing population and a flat or reducing budget from government. So the per capita expenditure on every person was getting less and less, and this was worrying as we were advancing in the future. And it starts way back. I remember in 1987 when the World Bank came up with a policy of our agenda for reforms for the highly indebted countries. Uganda, we were called to think about it, and that's when we started seriously thinking about alternative financing mechanisms. 1989, we started a small study at Kasangati, and we came up with user fees, which worked for about 1 decade and were closed in January 2001 by His Excellency the President when there were mismanagement of these fees. But in the background, from 1996, we were working on the health insurance mechanisms. And this was also strengthened by the work we had done at KISIS in 1994, where we introduced community-based health care financing, and the communities were very happy with what was happening. So we started working with Hanover University in 2000. Harvard University joined with School of Public Health. Again, a good study came up emphasizing we can introduce health insurance as an alternative financing mechanism. And later in 2006, the Cabinet instructed the Minister of Health to start drafting a bill on health insurance. That time, we went seriously into consultations. Whom didn't we consult in this country? We went everywhere. We went to Moroto, we were in Gulu, we went to Arua, we went to Soroti, Mbale, Kampala here, of course, Masaka, Mbarara, Fort Poto. All the local governments were consulted. Here at the headquarters of the Ministry of Health, we called all heads of hospitals, regional and district hospitals that time. We went down into the whole structure. The health workers were mobilized. All the stakeholders in this Kampala and outside Kampala were consulted. The insurers were consulted. The parliament was consulted. The ministers, the cabinet was consulted. And through all that, we mobilized a lot of information on how health insurance should be done. And this was in total support. The workers had some element of dissent. But as we discussed...
What was that dissent?
They were looking at... it was more on suspicion of corruption. They were saying some of these schemes started by government are likely to be mismanaged. So they were comfortable with organizations like NSSF, which is already holding their money, being the one to run such a scheme. But as we discussed along the way, and we assured them that the design will take care of all those corruption tendencies, there was a buy-in from the workers. So we were very happy with that. Then, of course, the private insurers, they were also uncomfortable at the beginning, partly because they felt they would be edged out of business. But the moment they realized they could be integral players in providing health insurance, then things started getting very well. Lastly, we had the manufacturers in the private sector. Those ones were having sticky issues, saying, this thing is going to demand them making a contribution to the fund, and this is going to be an additional form of tax because they were already paying taxes, they were already paying heavy bills on transporting goods from the coast to Uganda, electricity tariffs were high. So I think they consulted different authorities of the land, and they were saying, no, you hold on a bit. That was 2009, and I think the ministry had to apply some brakes and wait. So further consultations went in, went to ILO laws to see how the law warrants that workers should be protected by the employers making a contribution to their health. And we moved on, and the bill was more or less done according to how people wanted. One, there was a task force in place.
Yeah.
This task force comprised all the major stakeholders, and they had good people nominated to shape the whole thing to fit what everybody wanted. So it had credibility. But there was that strong lobby from some group that made us slow down on this enactment. And I think the same lobby group was coming in recently to stifle the speed at which it is now moving. And
is it wrong to name the lobby group? We discuss it?
It's mainly I'm not so sure, but I have heard from some quarters that these again were manufacturers who were saying, saying, but the taxes are high, conditions of doing business is still adverse, so the cost of doing business is going to remain high. Now, where we have a disagreement as a bigger group, if my task force was still there, if I hadn't retired, the disagreement would be, do you want to keep all these workers under you without any health benefits, and they are sick, and you expect productivity to increase? Is it human to keep all these guys?
So by the time you left the ministry, it was
the paper
abeyance, so to speak.
The paper was more or less done, but there was no one with energy.
Had it been withdrawn from Parliament as such, or it was just left there?
It hadn't even been presented to Parliament.
Okay.
We had more or less done the document. It was with the top management of the ministry ready to go to Parliament.
Had the ministry supported it?
The ministry was in full support.
Okay.
All the time, all the ministers that came when we were developing were very supportive. There was even an interministerial committee where Public Service, Minister of Gender, Labour and Social Development, Minister of Finance were put in place to oversee how the whole thing was developing so that it can easily get the certificate of financial implications.
Which it got eventually, in 2017.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was so happy when I saw this thing coming, and for goodness sake, ladies and gentlemen over there, support health insurance, because what we are going through as a country, you need that. I saw people sweating during the campaigns when questions about health came up. It was poor, and even now, the elected and those who have been voted out, they are busy paying bills for their local people. But supposing there was a scheme mobilizing money from the local population, topped up from some quarters, either government or the employer, and you have a scheme assuring you with a card that when you fall sick, you don't have to phone your neighbor. You don't have to jump around, reducing your esteem that you're a broke man and your person is about to die. You are not fundraising on WhatsApp and whatever. I think you will feel you have made a contribution to the fund, and the fund is protecting you with your people.
Thank you so
this
much.
Was an excellent thing that my brother, Honorable Bukenya, and the team has really achieved. Thank you so much, and I believe you will get all the support all the way.
Thank you so much, Dr. Runumi. Very passionate and very important historical background to this. Let me come straight to the man who has delivered this. As chairperson of the Committee of Health, entire Parliament, to this extent, we definitely applaud you and commend you for the good job done, coming from the background that Dr. Runumi has brought us from. Now, but there are sticking issues, because a bill enacted by Parliament, it's not yet law until the President assents to it. And that's the process of law enactment in our situation here. Now, there are some people who are still worried. Will the President assent, especially given that the strong lobby group, and I need us to be candid, to be honest, to be sincere, and discuss it, because this is about Uganda, this is about our country. Is it the manufacturers who are opposed to this? Why are they opposed to it? There must be a reason they are opposed to it. Is it the private sector? Who are these in the private sector who are opposed? If it is a good thing, why are they opposed to it? Are there some gaps that have not yet been answered? We need to answer that, and the only way we can do so is to be honest and tell the truth that these are the people who are against this bill. Now, Dr. Bukenya, coming to the point that you passed this, the Minister of Health, I must say it specifically, Honorable Nabanja, not the senior minister, it was the Minister of State for Health, stood up on the floor of Parliament and wanted to withdraw the bill before you could pass it. You had a disagreement there with her, and the Speaker, who was chairing the House, said this bill has stayed for too long a time. This is the time that it must be passed for our people. Up to that point, do you think, are you assured that you passed a good thing? Are you assured that your product is going to be assented to by the head of state as the Constitution demands?
Well, thank you, Charles, for that question. First, from the background which Dr. Runumi has given, it's about more than 25 years.
Yeah.
When people are discussing
from
and talking about
96,
and talking about something. And so, but I would like to thank the Speaker, the Right Honorable Rebecca Litwala Kadaga, and the members who were in the House that day, and all the members of Parliament for coming out openly, because as we move out in campaigns and moving around the country, you see what people want and what they demand for. And I think one of the major roles of Parliament is to make laws that reach out to the ordinary Ugandan, to attend to the problems of the Ugandan. And we sometimes base this need of the community on the Sustainable Development Goals, on the National Development Plan, on the NRM Manifesto. There are many guiding principles and documents. There is need in the community. The Sustainable Development Goals talk about it. The NDP 2 and 3 are talking about national health insurance, 2 ended. The NRM Manifesto 2016-2021 talks about phased implementation of the national health insurance scheme. So generally, I think we are doing what we are supposed to do, to legislate, to attend to the demands of Ugandans. Secondly, when you talk about disagreement and what happened therein, towards the end of the processing of the bill, I think the minister came to the committee, and it was supposed to be our final meeting, and said that the president has expressed reservations on the insurance bill after consulting manufacturers who said that the cost of production in Uganda is going to be a little bit higher. And he had advised the ministry to liaise with the manufacturers and I think IRA, Insurance Regulatory Authority, to come up with something that is acceptable. But before, and the minister indicated that she wanted to withdraw the bill. And the procedure of withdrawing the bill is, because this bill was owned by government,
yes,
is you go back to the House and you give justification as to why you want to withdraw. And I think the minister had a meeting with the Speaker and also came to the House to give her reasons for withdrawing the bill. And actually the concern of withdrawing concerns, I think affects, Section 5, a small portion of Section 5 on premiums and other things. And when we are discussing this bill with the stakeholders, we realize that actually you can't fix premiums in the bill and you say that forever we shall be having people paying 100,000 every year. You can't, because economy is dynamic. Now with COVID, people may not have money. With campaigns, the money may go down. With the weather changes, it may change. So we expect that periodically there will be different recommendations from scientists. They are called actuarial scientists. I think the insurer will talk about them. Actuarial scientists who go and evaluate and come up with a recommendation of a figure that could work for a particular period. So we recommended that actually within the law that periodically actuarial scientists will be coming in to make recommendations, and revisions shall be made by the ministry to see that people are comfortable. So I think generally the House thought that this was a small thing to take us backwards from the stage where we had reached. And normally the procedure is that when the Parliament passes a bill which the President is not happy about, and he has returned very many bills, he makes comments and advises that, you know, this is this, this is that, this is that, and I think I propose that to do this, and it is brought back, and we debate it, and maybe modify or take what the President has proposed.
So it is usually that small part.
Yes, so there is nothing,
not the entire.
There is nothing unusual with what happens, but with what Parliament passed, I actually think the President will just sign, because within the law itself, we give the responsibility of determining the premiums to the actuarial team that is appointed by the board to do the work. So I don't know whether the President will get to this, because within the law that was passed, he has no way of saying that now the manufacturer is going to pass this law. So he has to wait for the actuarial report and then say maybe this is too much, let us call these people and we agree on what they can manage.
Let me ask you
I think the President will sign this bill.
Let me ask you at that point,
yes.
Didn't you do adequate consultation, including of stakeholders like the insurers?
Actually, insurers were there with us, the private sector were there with us, Employers Association was there with us, and all of them, their main concern was about governance and management of this fund. We want these Ugandans to steal the money. That was their main concern. But everyone was happy that something like this is coming up. And you know, this insurance is available in Uganda with the private insurance schemes, which capture only, I think, 1 or 2%. 1% of the population. We have also community-based schemes, the ones he has talked about in Chisizi, there are others in Luwero. So for a person in Bukuya who falls sick and doesn't have money readily available, will have to go and sell his maize garden at 20% of the expected price, and he gets money, and then they will be in chronic poverty. And you know, even the World Bank conducted a study within Uganda here, and showed that actually Ugandans spend 41% of their monthly income or annual income on health care. So you can't move to middle income if you don't have security and health care. So I think the President, who has been talking about moving to middle income, changing people's lives economically, will definitely sign.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
That brings me to Council Benson Kwikiriza. You have had where the issue at one time was almost towards the tail end of the passing as well, but you also had the clarifications made by your colleague on the left. What do you say to it? Why? What do the insurance regulators think about this and the stage that it has reached? Do you support the fact that if you were given time to speak to the President, would you tell him, Mr. President, please sign this thing now?
Thank you, Charles. We want to thank Parliament for passing this bill, because it is our belief that it has been long overdue. And we, in principle, agree with the fact that everyone needs health insurance, because the experiences have been there for all to see. At least we know a person or a relative who has failed to pay for their medical bills, and some have been detained in hospitals. There are instances where we have been fundraising for some of our friends to be able to afford and access better healthcare facilities. So it is a fact that we need medical insurance for our citizens of this country. So in principle, that is the right direction. And we appreciate the fact that the health insurance scheme, Act as it is now, is a framework law, and it is balanced with a lot of good provisions therein. But we also have a bit of reservations when it comes to certain provisions therein. But we think that the committee and Parliament have done a good job, and the rest can be handled administratively at that level.
What are some of your reservations as insurance regulators?
As insurance regulators, the first thing is in regard to regulation of the scheme. The bill and act provides for a board to oversee, and that is made up of representatives from the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Finance, and Ministry of Gender and Labor. But remember, there is an aspect of insurance.
Even the board has the IRA, has NSSF, has employees, and has labor unions.
Yes, but remember, this is a board that is basically policy and oversight. But there is an element of insurance, because other than just providing the healthcare services, there is a professional aspect to that, which includes provisioning for the fund, which includes underwriting. How are you going to determine that these are the health benefits that we need, and this is the amount of money or contribution that a member will have to make? And partly, it has been taken care of the fact that the authority participated with the ministry and gave some technical assistance in carrying out a study that was led by actuaries in determining and coming up with proposals on the rightful amounts. But as people who are engaged in the industry, we think that that aspect needs to be much looked into, because once you start collecting the money, you're looking at issues of sustainability, and we think that you need a regulator, just like the concerns from the public have been on the issue of transparency and management of the fund. And we believe that once you have a regulator to do that, like as in the case of Kenya, for example, you have their regulator in insurance there supervising their national health insurance scheme. And we're saying, if we're going to ensure that there is quality service and there is value for money, you need another person to touch and see that everything goes in order. And we're saying probably that is something that we could look into and reconsider. And then the other issue is in regard to the contribution. We appreciate the fact that the committee was wise enough to make a provision that the employer should, is a term they use that I forget. They said remit, I think 50%. And there I think we need to provide that clarity.
50% of the premium?
Of the contribution, yes.
Okay.
So the certificate had indicated that the estimate should be 4% of your salary.
Yes. Gross or net?
I think it was net. And then ultimately, if it is supposed to be 40,000, for instance, if you're earning $1 million shillings, the employer will contribute the 20 and would somehow automatically add for you an extra 20,000 as a contribution.
So the employer would contribute 50% of the worker's contribution.
Yes.
Yeah, but the way that I get the reading of the committee report, they are commenting about remitting, and they are saying shall remit.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether you're looking at just collecting and remitting or making a contribution on. But I think most importantly, we feel that there is need for flexibility, such that if an employer is willing to contribute even more, then it should not be the fact that they are probably pointing at that provision and saying that maybe I'm only restricted to making a contribution of 50%.
Okay.
So we feel that because you already know that there are employers who are paying for medical insurance for their employees 100% in these private schemes. So we think that if that flexibility is also made, then that would be something that would be beneficial for all.
Okay.
And then the other key thing is that once you look at the wording of the bill, it has an exception in regard to injuries related to motor accidents and also occupational hazards and diseases.
Yeah.
So in the event that I am an employee and I get an occupational illness, then I may not be able to get cover or attended to from the scheme. And we think that is dangerous, and that is something that could probably be considered. Because our concern is that for most of these motor accidents on the road, you do not have control. You may not have the financial resources there and then, and you need urgent assistance. And we're thinking that this is something that maybe could be reconsidered, such that provided I need that assistance, if I'm involved in an accident, I can go, be attended to, and then maybe if I'm to make any claim on compensation, maybe under motor third party, or maybe under the Workers' Compensation Act, then part of the proceeds maybe can go to the scheme, and then maybe the balance taken up by me as an individual.
Okay. I needed, before I bring in Kichoncho and Nicholas, either of the doctor, do you want to clarify on that, especially that last bit? Why did you make it like that? Why did you accept the motor accident?
I think the accident was considered in reference to the motor third-party insurance.
That it is covered under that.
So that is where it came.
Okay. How about the issue he raised earlier, the issue of there are already some organizations that cover full their workers? What did you do about that concern?
Well, you know, where we started, we said only 1% of Ugandans are insured under the schemes he's talking about.
Yeah.
And we wanted to capture the most vulnerable. You understand? Who are the other 99% who are not in this 1%?
So are you saying that?
I'm still talking. That is the first one.
Yeah.
But also, secondly, we envision a picture where these coexist.
Okay.
Like what is done in Kenya.
Okay.
And what is done in Rwanda. They are done differently, but they coexist. In Rwanda, for instance, if I pay AAR, because these social schemes don't charge a lot of money, the AAR goes to the national scheme and it declares that Odongotho or Runumi have paid. And it puts a portion of your subscription into the national scheme.
Okay.
In Kenya, it is entirely different, where the private scheme coexists, and when you go to the facility, you can use any of what is available to you.
Okay.
But everyone is entitled to the national one, and then the additional cost will be taken on by the private scheme.
Good. Mr. Nicholas, before I bring in Madam Kichoncho, I wanted to first exhaust the submission of the insurers. You are managing an insurance company as well. Tell us what your thoughts are about the bill as it is passed, and given the discussions that so far has been had here.
Well, from our side as insurers, looking at the bill and the whole gesture, we welcome it in good faith, and it's the right step for the country. We need to have a national health insurance scheme, and as insurers, players, we want to promote insurance, increase penetration, so this is a game changer for that. Looking at the broad strokes, we are in agreement. We are waiting for the fine print. So the fine print is what is causing this reservation word you're hearing. The manufacturers like Dr. Runumi mentioned, coming up and expressing their fears. you're having a couple of other silent people who might have fears. The key thing here is how do we get people to look at an opportunity in the bill as opposed to looking at it as another taxation tool. We are going to talk percentages, contribution, and all that. People look at certain costs as taxation because they don't see value for money. And this is something that should clearly come out from the, when we are getting to the specifics of implementation of the bill. I'll give an example. They've mentioned we are insuring about 1% of the population. Probably it's slightly less. The question is, this 1%, they are most probably paying already insurance costs for this. And if we follow a model where they are going to be the first to be, for lack of a better term, to be compelled to contribute, they are the formal sector. The formal sector always obey laws, they pay the taxes, they are compliant, and so on and so forth. This is not a tax, this is a benefit. If they already have that, we've already voiced our concerns to the committee that can we use a phased out approach such that let's start with those who are already not, those ones who are already not getting, such that by the time we get to the people who already have, we are more relevant to the country. There is a fear among the circles here that formal sector employees are going to be forced to contribute because they are compliant, but they will end up not using the scheme. They end up buying two kind of schemes, or subscribing to two kind of schemes, and one is simply a taxation, an additional taxation to cater for the country, for which they're already being taxed through the roof to do. And that fear has to be addressed through getting the fine print of the bill out. The other bit that the people like that we should pick from the private players is how are these schemes run in the country. It is one thing quoting other countries, but our country is not necessarily unique, but it has some unique features. I'll give an example of the manufacturers you're talking about. We design schemes for them. They are not the same as the one you give to UBC. This is a person who would ask you to set up a clinic in his facility, such that he doesn't pay 100 shillings in premium the way a UBC employee will pay, because he knows most of his people are there. He has a genuine concern, and if you don't address it, you're not adding value. So for us, it's adding value, understanding what is there, the dynamics, and getting a product that is sustainable. Because around East Africa, I think it's Kenya and Tanzania that I'll mention mostly, you find that most of the people in the formal sector don't end up using the scheme, yet they contribute to it. And some of us look at that as an injustice, because to that section of the population, despite them being 1 or 2% of the population, and it ends up being one of those things that some people will look at as a high cost of doing business in a particular economy. They say one of the taxes we have to pay is that we are introducing this probably halfway in the year when budgeting was already done, and for some of us in the private sector, we pay a lot to keep employees there. If you introduce a contribution where employees have to contribute, it's the employers who take the hit, because you cannot, employees, they look for competitive employment opportunities, especially in the corporate world. And that's another added cost of doing business. Those are the fears. And if we don't address those in the way we disseminate the message and engage, we may end up painting wrongly a good opportunity we have. And these are the things we want the Committee, Parliament, and all this to have addressed, such that we manage the expectations of our people.
Brilliant, brilliant. Dr. Runumi, it is good you have shaken your head, meaning that you have appreciated that point. I think we need to address, we need to respond to it. Some people, someone one day when we were having a discussion, I think with the Gobi, and I'm told he's online, he will be joining us after Madame Kichoncho's submission. And someone said that this is taxing the rich in order to subsidize the poor who are lazy. That's how they describe it. I think, Dr. Runumi, you were there, at MOBS. You remember that discussion? You came in when I moderated that discussion, and that the poor are the ones who are drinking, then they fall out of drunkenness, knock their heads down, and when the rich person is sleeping at home and is safe, knows that it is risky to drink and drive and all that. So it was such an interesting scenario, you know, construction of the whole fear. And that is something that, for me, I think that fundamentally must be addressed, because I belong to the group that is going to be tasked to pay immediately, because we are formal and easy to tax. Madam Kichonjo, you could probably even start us from there, because you represent a community that is, I wouldn't want to call them very needy, but that would be, you know, would need to be assisted with you know, as a starting group with this kind of infrastructure set in place. What is exactly your view of what the fears are, and do you envisage the president signing this and starting to help people immediately? If you were put those questions of this fear and the other fear, as Lutakome and Kwikiriza have said, what would you respond to them?
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to first add my voice that from the civil society perspective, right now in this space, speaking for and on behalf of the women that are the largest users of the health system, from a human rights perspective, interpreting this as a right to health issue that most of us from the civil society work have been agitating for a long time, and understanding that our constitution has made a promise to Ugandans to provide, increasingly provide access to health services. We celebrate the passing of the bill.
Yeah.
And we are at an excited point, because we believe indeed, like the other speakers have said, that it's been long overdue, and that of all things to compromise or to negotiate with, health shouldn't be one of them. It is a critical component. So to the extent that we are talking equality, inclusiveness, equity, these are core principles that we see in the promise of the bill. And yes, we hear the other voices that there could be fears, and indeed, even from civil society, there are some questions. But what I believe the passing of the law has done is create a starting point of conversation and of dialogue. So in terms of where we are today, is we have just started the conversation, and the board, the government, president, parliament, there has to be a way in forging the next steps that will allow for dialogue, because critically, from a legal perspective, the bill has passed with a lot of text to be included. So that is why Nicholas says we await what the actual bill will look like, the one that goes for assent. The Committee of Health did an amazing job, because they tried to listen to the voices that came to them, and they incorporated most of the issues that had concern. But as to the extent of every recommendation being included there, that we wait to see. And I think the community out there is waiting to see how most of these proposals are incorporated, because in them is the change maker. Right now, when you see the bill in its format, there is a lot to talk about, which the committee had, but will the president hear as much? Will the president assent as much? We call upon the president to really do whatever is possible, put back for review, increase the dialogue to ensure that the bill indeed gets assented. And this is not going to be a job of a day, of a few years. I think incrementally, it invites Ugandans to remain alert, to remain engaged, and for the stakeholders to engage as much as is possible. From civil society, this is where the concern is. If the question on inclusivity is not answered, we realize that what we really thought was in there may not be there. Because we, like Nicholas says, there could be a high burden on the informal sector. On the formal sector, and the informal sector is not fully captured. Right now in the framing of the bill, the contributions are seen from two main people, the formal sector, self-employed and salaried, and that is a very small percentage of people. So we wait to see how the wording will bring in every individual.
Was presented to Parliament.
No.
Not
I have read your report,
not
sir.
as it was passed.
I have read your report with the recommendations.
Where we say all members.
All members will contribute.
And even the certificate indicates that the informal sector was supposed to pay a certain premium.
It is only that of financial implications.
Yes, it is clear there. It is only that the formal in the private and public sector are much easier to catch. That is the difference.
Yeah, to the extent that it remains the core recommendation, because it's not yet written in the law, in the bill, to the extent that it remains a recommendation, we really hope that it gets there. That is why I'm giving credit to the committee which had. But right now, in the text of the bill, I haven't seen that. And that's where the inclusivity comes. The groups we want to be brought on the table, increase equity and get services for those remain. And that is critical. The services that were existing, the community health insurance schemes that were doing an amazing job, those it's proposed that they will coexist, there will be integration. We are yet to read the real language. So we see that all that is in, but we are yet to work with the refined language that actually gives a direction. So that is why from us, we see that it's an opportunity. It is just the start of the conversation where more actors are going to get on board, and we see that what the forefathers that wanted this to happen were pushing for actually happens.
Good. And Dr. Bukenya, I like the fact that you are trying to push for more clarification to be made clear on the issues she is raising. But that challenge remains, in my view, and I am borrowing from the tax base itself. If I borrowed from the tax base, you know that the government is still being challenged to increase the tax base, and that challenge is also part of, part of it is before you as Parliament, and to which both, government, the Parliament is part of government. To that challenge, the questions have not yet been adequately addressed, because we know for a fact that the biggest tax revenue is paid by the 3 districts around Kampala, Wakiso, Mukono, or Adampigi, if you like. The rest of the country, we are not very sure whether they are really paying up to the level that they should be paying. And the fact that government has not yet come up with a fine solution, sustainable solution, to bring them within the tax base, lends credence and evidence to what she is saying. You see, that the fear is that only the formal, the employed, and, whatever, the salaried, are the ones who might be, tasked to start paying, while government looks for a way of bringing those others. I think at this point, we need to bring the man who speaks economics. Can I find out? Ivan, my producer, is Gobi online? Ivan, you told me Gobi is online. Is Gobi online?
Yes, I'm here, Charles.
Professor Sir, you have been listening to the discussion, right? Did you get us right?
Very well, thank you.
Are you picking us clear?
I am very, very clear, and your panel is fantastic. I've been following every bit of it.
Brilliant, brilliant. This panel decided to depose you today for a good cause. Now, I'm bringing you at a very appropriate point of the fears. First, what is your view about the final passing of the National Health Insurance Scheme? And two, how do you think that these fears that have been expressed are well placed? How can they be addressed, in your view?
Thank you, Charles. I think the fears, of course, will always be there, and they are not quite spontaneous. They are coming because of a reason. Everywhere in the world, nations which have built good public health care systems tend to treat health care as a public good. Public good means that health care should be non-excludable, much as it is rival in consumption. You know, when Dr. Runumi is attending to a patient, he cannot attend to another one at the same time. But one should be excluded. So those nations ensure that all citizens are guaranteed some decent health care. On the other hand, we see that all countries with the poor or expensive health care systems, they tend to consider health care or health as a private good. And therefore, ultimately, you find that healthcare systems, and whether you consider it public or private, and how you address access, and what the lady on the panel has been talking about, equity, is a matter of social choice. The society, what it chooses. So I'm glad that in Uganda now, the representatives of the people are choosing a strategy of ensuring that all Ugandans can have access to health care. However, there are certain things and realities we must address if we want this to succeed, because there are other countries we can always benchmark. I've had the members of the panel are talking about our neighbors, but Nigeria adopted a universal health care system, almost or scheme, like the one being proposed, and whose legislation is now on the table of the head of state, but it has failed to be executed. You'll find that in Nigeria, it's only about 3% of the population there that is covered under that, and over 90% of the population is not covered. Why? Because you need to ask yourself a question: who's going to provide this health care which we want to universalize, ensuring that everybody has access? Who's going to provide it? If we think it's going to be the private sector, that's a fallacy. The private sector is profit-driven, and therefore it will be difficult for it to be relied on to provide this care. If you say it is the public sector, then you have one challenge where we have still in Uganda a number of issues with our public healthcare delivery system, which we have not addressed. And therefore, they should be the first issues to get addressed. You are talking of about 6 issues. Number one, the quality of the health care in Uganda, especially provided by the public sector. Everywhere you hear citizens complaining about the quality. Access has improved, but when people go to these hospitals, they don't get good health care. And that's why many of them resort to paying huge sums of money in the public sector. Then number 2, the functionality itself, functionality of the facilities. You are talking of equipment, the personnel, and so on and so forth. Number 3, the corruption in the system itself. Here you are talking of drug theft, absenteeism, by health workers, and so on and so forth. Then talk of also the other preventable health burdens which are there. You know, the accidents, we have seen teenage pregnancies increasing, and now the non-communicable disease burden, and so on and so forth. Now, when we were working on the current government's manifesto, I had the privilege of sitting on that committee where there were questions about this very scheme. And we consulted the health fraternity, the ministry, the people who are running the health care system. And the reservation was mainly one on who is going to provide that health care that we want people to pay for. And is it because you might be talking about failure to address market failures, and you go into thinking that money is going to solve the problems. There are typical market failure issues here, missing markets, that in other words, you don't have people to provide good health care, and therefore that needs to be addressed. Finally, there is someone who has talked about the value for money, and I think this is a critical point, because as you remember, Charles and Dr. Rumimi, when we were having this conversation last year at MOOBS, we organized at the Economic Forum at MOOBS, which I had, and we had a conversation with this and other partners. Our major discussion revolved around the contributions vis-a-vis the value which we are getting, because the formal workers in Uganda, you and I, you and me and others, have turned into, you know, we are working so hard, but the amount of money which is deducted from us now is getting quite, you know, exceedingly high. We are over-subsidizing other Ugandans. Because when you look at the deductions on every slip, you wouldn't really encourage more deductions. And now I hear you want also to ensure that the employer is going to pay 50% of what I pay. Now, that would also increase the cost itself. So there are certain things we need to consider and look into realistically on whether they can be addressed, and we get a scheme which is workable, a scheme which is not going to become overtaxing on a few people who are not likely to benefit from it simply because they are subsidizing others. Otherwise, the spirit of having universal access to good health care is humane, is really a welcome development by everybody. But me, I would think that we need to first check what do we need to do to make the public health care system in Uganda, which is already quite elaborate and widespread for people, work for them. Because that's the main issue now we have. Okay. People go to hospitals, they have been built, but there is no medicine, there are no personnel. Now, when they pay, will the personnel all of a sudden come? That is my question.
Thank you very much, Gobi. Important points there thrown to raise more discussion. We are going to come back from a short break and continue. But for the viewer out there, the viewer out there, if you want to join in the discussion, we are streaming live via Facebook and YouTube, UBC TV on Facebook, and UBC Television Uganda on YouTube. But you can also throw in your questions or comments right now from during the break within the next 10 minutes, so that I incorporate them in the discussion that is going on. You can join us on Twitter through hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines, through hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. Let's go for a break right now and we'll be back.
No one should stop you from finishing what's yours. That's why MTN gives you data bundles that don't expire. Load MTN Freedom Bundles using My MTN app and enjoy the freedom to finish your data bundles. MTN.
Today tastes like a new tradition, like an old favorite. Tastes like all hands on deck and all eyes on the prize. Today tastes like a piece of the action. And it never tasted this good.
That's their way of stopping HIV. What about you?
Welcome back from the break, and this is Behind the Headlines this Wednesday, the 14th of April, 2021, and we are looking at the National Health Insurance Scheme in Uganda, the first of its kind. Can it work? How can it work? The fears are definitely there, and the big question is not the fear. The big question is, how can those fears be addressed? But a national health insurance scheme from all the panel members here is a must to have. We have the Honorable, I almost said the Honorable Gilbert Bukenya, but the Honorable Dr. Michael Bukenya is chairman of the Committee on Health in Parliament. We have Madam Okanso Dora Kichoncho Musinguzi. She's Executive Director of the Uganda Network on Law, Ethics and HIV/AIDS, or UGANET. We have Dr. Francis Runumi, Architect of the Social Health Insurance and former Commissioner for Planning in the Ministry of Health. We have Mr. Benson Kwikiriza, who is the Senior Legal Officer in charge of regulations and drafting at the Uganda Insurance Regulatory Authority. We also have Nicholas Lutakome, who is from the Uganda Insurers Association, but is also Managing Director of Sanlam Life. Finally, we also on Zoom from Mutungo, we have our own panel member, Mr. Gobi, who has given up his seat for the packed panel in order for us to have some social distance here in the studio. but he's nonetheless participating from his sitting room. The discussion has gotten more interesting, but most importantly, more facts are coming out and questions that need to be asked. Let me start with, let me come back to the house here. The questions that have been raised, Dr. Runumi, are there some that you can respond to? One, the deductions, the timing, in other words, that that Mr. Gobi is talking about. Was this done at, in quote unquote, a wrong timing? Would there be any timing which is more appropriate for this, or we needed to do this now? And some of the other questions that, gaps that have been raised.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate all the issues and concerns that have been raised. Basically, I haven't had anything new that has been raised, nor even the fears that have been aired. They are not new. They are the same old fears about a new scheme that has not started, and for sure, when those fears come up, they can be entertained. What we need to understand right now is that the passing of the bill sets a stage for further dialogue and refinement of the path we want to take. You cannot have all the answers at the beginning. Wherever we went to consult, to benchmark, we found to have a good health insurance scheme was always work in progress. Kenya, Rwanda, even when you go there today, they are still doing a lot of refinement. We were amazed when we went to Germany and we found they started their scheme after the First World War. Wow. But up to that time, they were still refining because many things were coming on board, and there were many concerns from different quarters. So the purpose of the board, the purpose of the Insurance Regulatory Authority of Uganda is to continue tackling issues as they come. Professor Gobi came up with those issues and fears of taxing people, and there were issues about value for money. But I would like Professor start talking about money for value. Because whenever you are looking for valuable health care, you pick huge chunks of money because you are capable of getting this money and go to a clinic, a hospital, where you are sure you are going to get good benefits. Now it's you and me who are privileged to have some bit of cash in the pocket. How about the wananchi who support the whole health system? I mean the whole national economy. In Germany, Poland, Japan, and some other European countries, what we found is that a social system recognizes everybody at their level, that they make a contribution at their level. Someone who came up the other day at MOOBs saying these guys are lazy, they are not making money for us, we are sweating for money and we are subsidizing them. I think that was some degree of arrogance and being unrealistic. They didn't choose to be what they are, and some even drink because they are really frustrated. They can't have a job opportunity and so many other things. And in these COVID times, my friend, let these guys you are saying are lazy get COVID and you mix with them. Then you get it. You'll understand what it means to protect your neighbor. So it is extremely important that we look at ourselves as a Ugandan community so that you who has some bit of money can subsidize the other guy who doesn't have the money. Secondly, let's not mistake this thing that if you are not a member, you will benefit. No. To be a member, you have to pay, even if you are in the private, informal sector. These guys are organized. They have their circles. They have their small groups in the villages. We visited them and talked to them. Engozi groups, Sechiri Bachataka, Batakatwechize, Kwezika. All these are groups you will find at society. They have burial groups. They are contributing money for a decent burial of their members. Just say a portion of what you collect at your level goes to insure you. And you see. Batakakwechiza came out of Batakakwezika. In Western language, we mean if people were collecting money to bury themselves, we said, let this money be money to heal yourselves. And they welcomed it and started making a proportion of their collections in community-based health insurance schemes to protect them against bad health. So I think let's look at money for value. Health workers may not be available in all these health facilities you are talking about. That's pretty fine. Why? The pay is very low. The facilitation in terms of medicines and essential supplies may not be that good, and many other factors are there. So you may not have them there all the time. But supposing now there is a fund somewhere that is going to mitigate that factor, you think they will not go back to work and work diligently? So let's look at it as a chicken and egg situation. When there is assurance of funds somewhere, there will be assurance of services somewhere. And we talked to health providers at different levels. What is limiting them from investing heavily in providing medical services is inability of clients to pay. We are now saying many countries have done this design of health insurance and they are doing well. They are still developing and cleaning up and doing better. Why don't we start? Do we always have to procrastinate and keep on mark time, kulia kushoto, kulia kushoto, kulia kushoto? We have to move. In the East African region, we are the only country without health insurance. Not to say that Tanzania is perfect, not to say that Rwanda is perfect, not to say that Kenya is perfect. Okay. Kenya is now talking at 34% coverage. Tanzania is talking about 40% coverage. Rwanda is at 91% coverage. Uganda, we are at 1%. Where are we going? We need to start tackling the problem as it is. We have taken it too long. We can't keep sweeping this issue under the carpet. There were other fears about contributions of 50-50, I think it came up. This social health insurance in itself, the way it was designed, and this is a law under ILO, states that, you know, for protection of people who actually do the work in factories and other places, let them contribute 50% of what the actuaries have determined. It is the actuary, by the way, to now drive all the prices. The actuary is talking to the providers. How much does it cost you to treat a malaria case? How much does it cost you to complete a cesarean section? How much does it cost you to do ABC? Now, he assesses the risk population that is going to get this service and says, ladies and gentlemen, if we are to attain a fund that will enable this whole group obtain this volume of services and this quality of service, we must pay this amount. So the ILO law says, now, let the person who is a direct beneficiary and the dependents contribute 50%. The one employing this person also does what? Contribute another 50%. So in our case, if let's say it was 8%, and this was determined by the actuary of 2000 under the study conducted by Professor Vazeyo and others and the Harvard University. And they said,
in Uganda
here, 8% would be adequate according to the salary levels of today. If the salaries improve, this percentage will fall.
Okay.
We had to do with the NSSF. They asked us, how much money do you actually need? Why are you telling us percentages? Again, the actuary said, we would want NSSF to contribute on behalf of the members under the scheme of NSSF this much. When NSSF calculated, they found like 2% of what we were talking was adequate. So would you tell Vyarugaba to contribute more? You have to be flexible. So you work on a case by case by case.
Thank you.
But key is to have the 1 inch down there. In their small organizations, be it circles, be it small groups, having to understand what this means and making a contribution at that level. Then they pool their small monies with ours, the big monies. And when the scheme goes to purchase health services for all of them using the economies of scale, every Ugandan is protected at their level. That's what equity means.
I can now see hands up. Lutakome wanted, since your hand was up first, you start. But I want to drive you, the point you want to raise, plus the issue of that Gobi raises. Most of these businesses, even people with healthcare systems, are thinking profit. Is that the way to really think, humanly speaking? And we sustain that. Dr. Runumi has just given an example of COVID has really, in a very sad way, opened all of us up to see the reality. As rich people, people who are employed, working, we might be selfish and think that the other people who don't have the money are just lazy, but hey, let them get COVID and they come, we shall leave our businesses and all the millions here and take off.
I think, thanks a lot, Charles. One of the things I wanted to first, this can be debated. It's not necessarily true that people in the formal sector are rich and the people in the informal sector are poor. And I think it was talked about, it had a lot of ignorance in it. The fact of the matter is, some people choose to be in the informal sector for different reasons or talent and all that. Uganda, I think, has one of the highest informal sector proportions in the world.
True.
And one other thing I wanted to mention here is Dr. Runumi has told about an actuarial study done at a particular time. Me as an insurance practitioner, I know one thing: there is no correlation between salary and healthcare cost. The correlation is number of people, what can be given, and a pricing for per person or per head has to be done in absolute terms. It cannot be done as a percentage of salary, because a country that pays a salary level that is, a country like Uganda and Kenya might be having a population half. Let me give a different example. Namibia has a population of 2 million people. Uganda has a population of 40 million people. If Ugandans are paying a certain proportion of salaries and Namibia is paying more, it doesn't mean that it correlates with the cost of that. So that was a fundamental mistake that was brought up, and it creates a lot of that. Of course, the Honorable MP has mentioned that the gist of that was the ease of collection. The ease is, let's first get to these guys who are formal and collect to them. We don't have a problem with that. However,
this is about laziness.
No, it's not.
No. It is partly about laziness of the people concerned.
Now the challenge
the ones we are saying that are stuck with the expanding the base. It is about that.
It has a lot to do with the worry. Includes things like laziness, recklessness, which is due to, we all know in social studies that the less someone is educated, the more someone is at a certain stage, the more reckless, or it
is not the person in the informal sector who is lazy.
No, not informal sector.
It is the person in the technical person who is not going out there to do the things.
In fact, I remember in that MOOB's discussion, one student got up and drew painted a picture and said, imagine me who studied and I am working, I plan my family and I say, I will stop at 3 children because I know that is what I can manage, even if I'm earning 5 million per month. But there is this brother of mine who is in, let me use the example of, we did a study in Kavale, and there is one lady who gave birth to 14 children, and she stopped at P4. And you can imagine at that level, then this guy said at MOOBS, now you are saying with this health insurance scheme that I should subsidize such a reckless person. Is that being fair to me? That is what the question that person asked.
But Charles, to be clear, my argument is not that one. No, there are very many people in the informal sector there who are very willing even to contribute. We talk to Kasita, and they have their networks. But the person who is going to go there, technically, like if you say, when you talk about the tax base, people concentrate on the easy things.
Yeah. Yes,
the people responsible to collect the tax don't want to go deep down there to find those people who are supposed to be paying taxes.
They want to look for the what do they call it? Yes, the low-hanging fruit.
So the lazy one is the technical person supposed to be looking for the particular. There are very many people, especially for health insurance, who are down, even in the villages, who are willing to pay. But it will be easy for me in my office to say, those ones in Bukuya, they are indigent. And I leave it at that, and I say government pay for them. Yet they are
able.
Yes, that is my challenge.
Okay. So, okay, quickly, let me come to you, but let Lutakome finish his point,
so
then I come to you
straight. The point I
straight.
was trying to make, Charles, is many times systems evolve to manage certain scenarios, and I don't want us as a country to design certain things that are going to kill the formal sector, because tomorrow you don't be surprised to wake up when the formal sector is following the trend of your contractors, your non-employees.
Okay.
So we don't have a payroll for you, we shall pay you fees. Okay. Because it's favorable for you to go the other route. And as us as insurers, private insurers, what we were saying and we were lobbying for, and Dr. Runumi has heard this before, is can we have an attempt by this policy to grow both sides? If a person already subscribes to the private sector, to a private health insurance scheme, that should be used as a tool to exempt them from the mandatory contribution, such that we look for the people who don't have.
Okay.
And I think that's a win-win for everyone.
Okay. Maybe that's, Dr. Bukenya, you need to respond to that again later, because I think it was you who suggested that the two can actually coexist. But Lutakome is on it. Kichoncho, you will come after Kwikiriza. He wanted to respond to some issues.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. I think it was on the issue of inclusivity.
Yeah.
And I think we seem to be mixing the two.
Okay.
Because the fact that I'm making a contribution, yes, another person may not be able to make that contribution. But for those that are not able to, who have been classified as indigents, the obligation still relies on government to provide. So even for those who are saying that, yes, I can afford, but I'm subsidizing for the poor. Yes, there is a little bit of truth to that, because basically insurance is about numbers.
Yeah.
The more people I have on board, then the reduced cost in regard to offering of the service. And that is why we have since moved from the notion of making it voluntary but compulsory for all. So there is a bit of subsidization, but that still does not shift the obligation from government to provide for them. I think that is the clarity that I wanted to make. But also, and that is the biggest challenge that we face, is that even in our discussion here, we're relating that to a tax, which is wrong. This is insurance. This is a guarantee that once I fall sick, I should be attended to at any accredited medical facility.
And everybody falls sick.
True. And that is why we were saying that it is indeed important that we have the scheme out and running.
Okay.
So for issues regarding the collection, I think that can be managed administratively, and that is why we're actually having these discussions.
Okay. After Kichoncho, Dr. Bukenya, you need to respond to the fears of corruption. The fears of corruption. And I'm being deliberate to throw that at you.
Because I'm the most corrupt?
I pray you are not. That was not in my mind.
Okay.
Because you are a legislator currently, and that you also passed, congratulations, you will be in the 11th Parliament. The issue is, if you are talking about the fears of potential corruption and abuse of this money, then what is being put in place, or the thoughts that are in mind to address or plug that loophole? But Kichoncho, before you come in, someone from Apache called Eric has sent a question here saying, "Good evening, Charles. My question goes to Madame Kichoncho. how best can the insurance scheme be of help to some of us who are unemployed and living positively with HIV? And then someone also says, countries that offer national insurance pay well health workers. They put drugs in all facilities. Will the money be for paying those mentioned or not? This is Julius. I don't know whether you want, I think that will be for the doctors, but if you want to respond to it, you can also do the same, just because they didn't indicate who they were asking.
I wanted to raise two issues before the question, but also the question would be part of that as well. Still, again, to reinforce the core benefit we get from the insurance scheme of ensuring that we leave no one behind. As a country, we are not going to reach our development goals if there is going to be the haves and the have-nots, especially on health, because indeed, as we've all discussed, it's a social good that we all need to develop the country, and it is just in line with our national development plan. So we will not be saying we can't have a homogeneous society. The lazy, those who are producing many children, that conversation we need to address and arrest, because we will not at any one time be the same, and we need to acknowledge that to go forward development-wise, we will have to go with everybody. On the issue of what is being done currently, for HIV care, really government needs to be applauded. I believe that those who are in need of HIV medicines are available. Medicines are not being sold in private facilities. So for the person who sent a question, government is treating their sick, and ARVs are available and they can be accessed at all care points. There is an issue I wanted to raise also earlier, that in terms of conversations that are going to go ahead, it is an issue around palliative care. Our health system provides for preventive care and curative care and also palliative care. But what the bill right now has covered mostly, and I've seen what the HIV committee handled, is mostly about prevention and treatment, the curative. But the palliative care, where there is really a lot of burden, especially given the burden of the NCDs now, we have lots of cancer patients. Those patients are paying a lot highly from their pockets. But because of their complication of their conditions, they don't seem to be covered by today's medical cover, the private schemes that are available. It's too expensive for insurers to cover, for example, cancer care. And we were hoping from the community that there would be such cover for people that need to get the expensive treatments. So when we deal with prevention and deal with curation and we don't deal with palliation, then there is still a gap. So that is an area for continuous conversation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Councillor. Now, Dr. Bukenya had promised to come to you, but just in the nick of time, someone says, Charles, no drugs, no equipment, no personnel. Corruption and fraud is very high. Then says, the formal sector already pays taxes to government. This should be used to pay for the poor. We are choking on taxes. Now, this person viewing has reminded me, which I wanted to ask. Uganda pays up to about, I think by last year, Dr. Runumi should know better, or even Dr. Bukenya, this come to you before you in Parliament, almost 400 billion shillings in what we now call medical tour to especially India. Medical tourism. Is it possible that part of this money, in your thinking, can be instead rechanneled as a contribution by government to this kind of scheme?
what should be said is that Ugandans spend 400 billion annually on seeking health care out of the country, but not government money. Private individuals like
this is both government and private.
No,
this is the entire.
90% of that money, it is the private individuals going to Aga Khan in Nairobi, going to India, going to the UK, going to Turkey to seek health care on their own will and on their own pocket.
Oh.
It is not that we make a budget and it is allocated that 400 billion is going there.
That's a brilliant clarification.
So I
think you should help Ugandans understand that, because the understanding outside there, the understanding outside there is that this is from government budget.
They are watching UBC, so they are understanding this.
Good.
So I think they need to understand that. So you can't. The only way we can do that is to promote our own health care here, by putting the private practitioners and the government practitioners under the scheme, and we give them more money.
Yeah.
When people are going there and they develop more, because we have the human resource, but it is a bit of capitation financing that is missing, that maybe insurance can help to solve. So I think that one should be clarified very well.
Thanks a lot about that.
Secondly,
the corruption.
The person still, corruption. Corruption is everywhere. It is only not coming. It is not coming with only insurance. It is on the road. It is in the school. It is in telecommunication. It is in media. It is everywhere. Whereas in the bill we put some elements on penalties on actually people who are caught in fraud, because the corruption in the insurance can be both from the service provider and from the managers of the fund. So we put some penalties there to see that is resolved. But you know, penalties have been there, but people are still corrupt. So it is about implementation of the anti-corruption measures and possibly bringing back the Simbwa bill, which was there about 6-7 years ago.
Property.
Yeah, if you are caught, confirmed, everything is taken and you remain there, and then people will appreciate. So it is implementation of the laws, and then it's strengthening, and also effecting what has been put in the bill. People are talking about shortage of drugs, low pay, but when Dr. Runumi was introducing this thing about alternative health financing, this is another source of money. And depending on which model we decide to take, we can decide to start at a higher level like the Kenyans. But even the government facilities are reimbursed for services offered. And that money that is reimbursed can be used to improve on pay, can be used to improve on availability of drugs, and also improve on infrastructure. The imagination by everyone is that we are going to wake up one day when everything is there. You have palliative care, you have cancer treatment, you have everything, which is not possible. The beginning has to be small on what is manageable, and we grow it slowly. And we grow it slowly somewhere. But if you say that you are starting everything at once, it will never kick off.
Okay.
So people should appreciate all those things. And also I want to emphasize his point, that we shouldn't tag health insurance premiums to taxes. These are completely two different things.
Yeah.
They have some similarities, but they are completely different things. Because Ramadan said health is a social what?
Good.
And this, there is a way we should look at it as a special aspect. And we should find out why Tanzania is middle income. Did health insurance contribute? Because if I secure you, you'll be able to keep more money without spending it.
Yeah.
And then you can move to middle income much faster.
And you can be
but
more
then
productive.
We are discussing this here. But even in the US, they are still discussing Obamacare. It was a big debate during the campaign. So,
I agree with you.
So these things are being done in Kenya, are being done in Tanzania, with all the fears are being done in Rwanda. Why can't we do it?
Good. Actually, it is worse. The name they have given it in the US is even worse. It's where the idea of tax the rich to benefit the poor started from. Someone called Edward says, thanks a lot for today's discussion. Very illuminating. The right to health is fundamental, and a well-managed health insurance scheme is a good step in the right direction. Thanks a lot, Edward. And then another person here called Mr. Walker says, good evening, Charles. As a peasant from Abaco sub-county in a Lebtong district, I don't seem to understand those things of health insurance that you people are discussing. So, Dr. Bukenya, you hear your viewers out there, what they are listening. They are watching, but they're saying they don't understand. Where do peasants benefit from what those educated people are discussing?
Well, maybe we start with that.
As a doctor, you tell that Mr. Walker.
Maybe we start with that one.
Yeah.
When I was talking earlier, I said when I'm in Bukuya there,
yes.
There is even a practitioner who is called Salakuchibanja.
Yeah.
When you are sick, you agree, and he goes and chops on your what? Your land, and he treats you. Then the others, when maize has just started flowering, when maize has just started flowering, you sell it to some rich guy, gives you some little money, 20% of the equivalent, or you sell your goods and you go. So, and also there is a component in the bill where it is upon government to pay for that peasant who they have deemed not fit to pay or not able to pay, to contribute. And I think that was part of the minister's fears, that it is going to increase government expenditure in health by being committed by law to pay for the indigents, for the very poor who can't pay. So they are part of it. And if you involve the private sector, it means that if I'm in an area and the nearest facility is private and accredited, and I'm insured, I don't need to look for the government one. So even the peasant one will be able to benefit. And it is because are already catered for by Sanlam. And that is the 1%. So the main component of the bill is looking for the 99% who are the poor, like that one who commented.
Like Mr. Walker here. Thanks, Mr. Walker, now you have heard, you are part of this. But someone called Wilbur from Cavalry says, good evening, Charles. We are listening and watching you together with our Dr. Runumi from here in Cavalry. And then we are not discussing education. But Geoffrey says a person may have a policy of 50 million, yet when he is sick with a bill of 2 million, the insurance company pays only, the insurance company will pay only, say, 1 million. Why is that so? Secondly, some sicknesses are not covered. Dr. Runumi, you may need to respond to this, I think, or Dr. Bukenya. Thirdly, hospitals with the right doctors do not accept insurance. This is from Geoffrey. Kindly let those guests respond to that. There are 3 questions which are too long. They are too long, I can't read them. Kindly send short messages which can be read faster so that we get as many as possible. Now, Mr. Gobi, it's now your time. We have 5 guests here. You have to ask each one of them a question. Kindly make a, Mr. Gobi, make a 1-minute statement on the discussion so far, and then ask your questions. Gobi?
Still.
Hello?
Yes, I'm here. Are you hearing me?
Yes, very, very well.
Great. I was saying that on a good note, I think this health insurance scheme is likely to help us circumvent the limited fiscal space that we are having at this time and going forward, so that we can sustainably finance the health sector. And also the compliance rate, according to the research I've looked at, of especially informal workers. I will mainly insist on informal workers because they are the typical workers in Uganda, outside agriculture. 9 of 10 people who are outside agriculture in the informal sector or informal economy. And research indicates that in countries which have implemented this, the compliance rate of informal workers in paying their insurance premium is surprisingly higher than even the formal ones.
Exactly.
So that gives comfort to people like Dr. Rumime on this. However, I have a few questions.
Yes, please.
Number one, you know, Dr. Rumime and the panel, I don't know how you shared these few questions I have. There are higher numbers of non-poor working in the informal sector. They are non-poor, but they are working in the informal sector. Usually we call them the missing middle. And these pose a major obstacle to achieving universal health care. How do you think these are going to be addressed? The non-poor working in the informal sector. Also, the administrative difficulties in recruiting, registering, and collecting regular contributions in a cost-effective way amongst the people who are not formal, who are not organized. How are we going to limit the administrative cost of recruiting, registering, and collecting regular contributions? In addition, sometimes workers in the informal sector with the high risk or high health risks, they tend to join faster the national health insurance schemes, which reveals adverse selection problem. How as those gurus in insurance who are on the table, how are you going to tame the adverse selection problem in this particular scheme? And finally, the religious beliefs and also beliefs in supernatural reasons behind diseases, they often hinder people, especially in societies like ours, to enroll for formal health services. How are you prepared to circumvent people who are believing that the diseases they are getting, they are because of their neighbors bewitching them, they are because of people not wishing them well, or they believe in supernatural reasons happening, going to church? How are you going to address some of these issues so that we have as many people as possible in the scheme to achieve the best kind of principles out of it? Thank you. I've enjoyed the show.
Thanks a lot. Who wants to start? Because we are now left with 10 minutes, so I'm going to divide 2 minutes each for the 5 of you, and then we wind up. The lady has raised her.
How to get communities to deal with the barriers to a better health-seeking behavior. That is also the benefit of everybody rolling out in the health insurance, and especially the benefit of these community groups that Dr. Runumi was talking about. When communities mobilize at that level, they actually mobilize to do health promotion many times. They teach themselves, they create awareness, because then health has been given a platform for conversation. We believe that the more communities get buy-in and the more the community is mobilized, the issues they will be debunking are the myth, the religious, cultural issues that want to look at disease or poor health as issues of witchcraft, to address them as issues of health promotion, so people are able to prevent diseases actually before they happen. So that will be my quick one. Thanks.
Good. Thanks. Kwikiriza.
Well, Charles, first of all, on the issue of handling religious beliefs, I think it's a matter of beliefs in the supernatural. It's a matter of acceptability and sensitization. I think that will go hand in hand. Once the citizens see value in the service, then they will voluntarily join on board. And that is why you even look at the approach that NSSF has adopted, whereby it is now rolling out, I think, the voluntary approach for those that see value. But then also in regard to collection mechanisms, we have been having discussions with the ministry and the established systems. For example, NSSF collects already.
Yeah.
So you could tap into the system to collect.
Okay.
URA does a lot of collection. And then there's also an issue of information asymmetry. And we have entities like NIRA now that have a lot of information regarding citizens. So once you feed into that already established system, then collection should be simpler. What we would probably discourage against is having high administrative costs, for example, in collection, in administration, yet this should actually be used to focus on actual service provision in regard to health, and also maybe facilitation and payment, medical workers, and also equipping of medical facilities. So I think it is something that would probably have to be looked at too. And then the issue of higher numbers in the informal sector, I think the Honorable here maybe could address that.
The higher number in
the missing, yes. True.
Who is following? Yes. Okay.
I just wanted to comment something briefly on something that Ramadan raised, adverse selection, especially in the informal sector. In the insurance side, we normally categorize customers into groups and individuals, and the terms are normally not the same. However, this one will win when everyone is treated in a certain way. And like the Honorable MP mentioned, we have to sweat the people designing this to come up with innovative ways to collect this money. For instance, if people are going to voluntarily enroll, anyone who is scheduled for an operation will be the first to enroll. And anything that happens there might be something that you didn't plan for. One of the ways probably that could be better, we define a group as a collection of people brought together by a reason other than insuring. And insurance becomes that what brings them together. So a lot of work has to go into developing the groups in terms of trade unions, marketing, cooperative unions and stuff. And through the sale of their proceeds from their communities, a portion of this is picked at that point, such that people can all enroll and we do not have a lot of these restrictions. Because if it's a national scheme, we should not really have a lot of restrictions on people, because we assume everyone needs health care more. Logically speaking, you cannot say you can't enroll because you're sick, because a person who is healthy will not think about it as a priority. So we have to have a mix of those. So a lot of thinking has to go around how do we collect, how do we get people into groups, how do we make it easier for people in an organized group or a trade union or circle or something like to get better favorable terms of onboarding. Yeah, that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Mr. Lutakome. As Dr. Runumi and Dr. Bukenya make the final submissions, Honorable Twesije John Tamuhira, MP, says, "Good evening, Charles. I would like to thank my honorable colleague, Dr. Bukenya, and the honorable members of the committee for the great achievement of health insurance scheme What we seriously need to do now is to educate a few people who are influential in our society so that we take the message to our people deep in the villages. This is a great achievement in our history as a country. Thank you, Charles, for hosting all those great people. Thanks, Honorable Twesige, and for watching us and for participating. Dr. Onumi.
Thank you very much. Professor, when it comes to registration, you just take heart. What we need to do first is to educate masses like our friend Walker about the benefits of health insurance. The moment the communities understand that unless they have contributed a premium to the scheme, they are not members and they cannot benefit, they are going to organize themselves locally in their small groups and will come as a group to even avoid adverse selection and register and pay their stipulated premiums. I saw this happening in 1994 when we were introducing a community health insurance scheme at Kisizi. My dear, we did 2 villages and the others ran away. They were not interested. The moment the results came out and benefits were clear, all of them organized, came with village registers, and were all willing to contribute to the premium we had calculated. So with the registration, that will be faster. And it is even much better today with IT. IT, there are so many innovations going on I see in this country. There are many softwares our young brains in innovation can come up with to make sure that everybody is captured, including the premiums that we are talking about. All these can be harmonized. NSSF is already doing a good job. We can, you know, roll out some of the good things they are using to get more people and more premiums into the whole thing. The LCs can also be used to mobilize people and ensure that they are part of this scheme. These days when you drive your car without a third-party license, the police will stop you. You have not bought a third-party license. Now, you imagine they are stopping you because of your car. How about somebody stopping you because of your health? You are not insured for your health. Which is more important, your car or your health? And you will get people running to get their health insured, even those without cars and bicycles. So there will be an avalanche of people trying to come in to enroll. But key is to come in a group, and that's when you will get better results, less adverse selection, and you will have no problem. You will collect more funds and purchase at a global scale. One last thing I would like to talk about is the quality of care, which everybody is
referred to.
Yeah. The quality of care will definitely show up the moment the committee that is purchasing these services calls for this kind of service, the quality of care. People will reorganize their health centers, their clinics, their hospitals to be able to qualify for accreditation. Not everybody who puts a kipande in front of his clinic will participate in this scheme. You must show reason why you should partake the funds of the contributor. There must be value in the clinic. And once they get this money, they will improve the services. That's what Tanzania did. They hardly had any facilities up country. By the moment this money was available, these guys went up country, services were poor, first year, second year, third year, everybody had styled up. Now they are proud of a good health network and they are increasing and improving. So these are some of the things we shall explain in detail in the future if we are given a chance to explain. And once people are educated and they see that this thing is real, as has been demonstrated in several countries we have visited, then you are going to see Uganda transforming. Once the health is good and people are making good money, then as my colleague Dr. Bukenya said, can't we move to the middle income status? But poor people cannot move there when they are very sick.
And we can't have some people move, leaving some people.
No way. We are one society. We must move together. That's why in voting, there is no segregation. Every vote counts. But then after the vote has been cast, why start grading people and even downgrading others? The voter this time, you must get something.
He is an informed Ugandan.
I am an all-rounder.
Finally, Dr. Bukenya,
To start with the religious beliefs and others, I think just before COVID, Equity Bank and the Uganda Protestant Medical Bureau were attempting to launch a form of community health insurance where they were asking people to pay 100,000 and you can access all UCMB facilities, UPMB facilities in the country throughout the year. So there is good buy-in already. We need to start with where we are. And I'm sure the day it will be signed, you will be shocked at what you'll find. So we have starting points. Secondly, collection, innovativeness is very simple. How do you pay for DSTV? You pick your phone from wherever you are, it's your account number, and the collection is registered. We just need to change a few things and it moves. So I don't think it will be difficult with development in ICT, which we say is going to take us wherever I want to be. And then the informal sector I've talked about. Maybe the only challenge which I will talk about, Charles, you didn't invite the Minister of Health, the owners of this thing, the principal. They should have given us a clue on the other things which they want to put in. So I don't know whether I've left the other questions, but I think...
Just something that we have missed from Ministry of Health that you think we can pick up next program?
No, they are the chief owners. The next time you should invite them and
I'm going to make sure they come next time.
Ideas.
And then we close the gaps. Any other issues that were, especially if the president delays to sign, we shall summon the Ministry of Health to explain why.
So I think the buy-ins will be there, especially in the informal sector, which we are worried about, and even in the rural people who we can't access very well. I think the buy-ins are there because they always ask those questions. Because the challenge now is being able, if you go to be treated for malaria in a facility near you, I think the minimum may be about 50,000 shillings. That is the minimum in the village one. And if you get malaria every month. And also the issue of corruption can be handled with accountability. When you contribute, I think it is easier to own and ask for accountability and the value for your money for whoever is concerned, and we shall be in a way able to reduce on the corruption.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Kwikiriza, you wanted?
And that is why I was pointing back to the issue of regulation. Yeah. You need a regulator to do that. Okay. And such that we start on a good note and we're able to run and maintain it all throughout. That is why issues of quality will be resolved.
But definitely, accessibility, equity, affordability will be improved. Even quality will be improved by this kind of bill.
Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady. Thanks, Dr. Bukenya, Dr. Runumi, thanks a lot.
Thank you for
Madam Kichoncho, Mr. Kwikiriza, and Nicholas. Thanks a lot to Gobi on Zoom from home. From the entire team, I want to thank the technical team making it possible that this program is available for you out there to watch. And my producers, I have a number of producers who make me look like I know something to discuss for the nation here with these good panel members, Morris, Mr. Odoch, Bills, Ivan, and Kent, and all the rest, Fred, the entire team behind the headlines. And to all of you out there, COVID still exists, so ensure that you follow the SOPs, wear your mask, social distance if possible, wash your hands with soap and sanitize as much as possible, and ensure that you do everything to remain safe. Until next week, God bless you all. God bless Uganda. Bye-bye.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Window dressing is arranging products in a store window to make them look nice and appealing.
Window dressing.
Anna, I just invested in this great new company, and you should too. It's a sure thing. And look at all the free stuff you get.
Oh, you should be careful, John.